Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. My twin spent 3 months pretending to be me, maxed out credit cards in my name, left taunting notes after breaking into my apartment, then showed up with a lawyer demanding I owe her. So I pulled an Uno reverse in the most devastating way possible. But to understand how it got that far, you need to know what growing up with her was like. Valeria was better than me at everything, and she made sure we all knew it. It started with a scoop of ice cream when we were 6 years old. I had picked the rainbow sherbet because it looked like a unicorn had exploded into a cone. She chose mint chocolate chip. One bite in, I gagged. Mine tasted like vomit that had been dipped in a toilet filled with diarrhea. I threw it away right there on the sidewalk. Meanwhile, Valeria was licking her cone like it was the nectar of gods. Good job, our parents yelled. We always knew you were the better twin. They laughed like it was a joke, but I knew it wasn't. Fast forward to 9th grade, our first finals week. Valeria was going on and on about how studying was for losers. Ugh, she groaned from the couch. I'm not wasting my life on books. I'll only be young once. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went back to my room. At 2 a.m., I was still awake, hunched over my desk with a highlighter in one hand and my biology textbook in the other. Then the door burst open. Valeria stood there, hair wild, phone in hand. Do you have a charger? She asked, stepping in. Then she stopped. Her eyes locked onto the open book in front of me. She froze like a deer caught in headlights. You're studying? What the F? I just rolled my eyes and turned back to the textbook. Close the door on your way out. For the next few days, I barely saw her face. She was buried in books. At first, I was happy. I thought maybe this would bring some balance. Maybe she'd stop looking down on me. But when the results came out, I didn't even have to ask what she got. She came tearing down the hallway like a rocket, a paper clutched in her hand. Haha, you fat I got an A+, she shouted, waving the paper in my face. Let me see what you got. I showed her mine an A. She bent over, clutching her stomach from laughing. I effing knew I was smarter than you. That stung. But worse was what happened later that night at dinner. We were all sitting around the table when she pulled out a laminated copy of her exam paper like it was a national treasure. Oh my God, Valeria, Mom gasped. You laminated it? That's hilarious. Dad's chest swelled with pride. That's my girl. No one even bothered asking what I got. I cleared my throat and waited for the room to quiet down. I got an A, I whispered. Mom didn't even blink. You need to start being more like Valeria. After that, I just stopped trying with them. I started isolating myself, spending all my time in my room with Midnight, our black cat. I stopped telling them things. Stopped hoping for anything. So when college application season rolled around, I was buzzing with excitement. Finally, I was going to be out of this house. I was sitting beside Valeria when she got the email from her dream college. I watched her open it. She read it silently. Her legs started bouncing faster than a trained window girl on speed. Then I saw it in big, red Arial font. Rejected. I watched the light drain from her face. She looked like someone had sucker punched her in the gut. 10 seconds of silence. 10 seconds of her eyes starting to glisten. And then, after the briefest sniffle, she turned to me to ask a question. Can you tell Mom and Dad that you accidentally deleted my acceptance email, and that's the reason I didn't go? I blinked at Valeria. She wasn't crying anymore, just looking at me like this was the most natural thing in the world. I sighed. I don't know. Thanks. You're the best. She cut me off, grinning like she'd won the lottery. For the next few weeks, she was less mean to me than usual. Not nice, but less cruel. I guess that was her way of saying thanks. A few weeks later, we were sitting at the dinner table when I asked, Can you pass the carrots? Valeria's chair scraped back as she slammed her hand on the table. Why would I pass you anything, you conniving? Stop, I whispered, already rubbing my temples. She ignored me. MOM. Delilah deleted my college acceptance email, and I missed the deadline to accept. My mom's fork clattered on her plate. My dad spit his sparkling water all over the table. We always knew you were jealous of Valeria, he said, shaking his head. But we never thought you'd take it this far. They believed her. Just like that. After that, I stopped talking to them. It was impossible anyway. Every conversation, every attempt, always circled back to the email. The one I didn't delete. The one that never existed. By the time I finished high school, moving out was a no-brainer. I didn't go home for the holidays. I didn't call. I didn't even care. Instead, I sent birthday and Christmas gifts through Amazon. One-click shipping. Easy. Even got Valeria something each time, since she never did go to college. Fast forward 4 years. I graduated university. I invited them all to the ceremony, even though it felt pointless. It was the first time I'd seen them in years. I met them for photos after receiving my diploma. That could have been Valeria, was the first thing out of my mom's mouth. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Yeah, the diploma should be mine, Valeria added smugly. Then, and I wish I was making this up, they took my cap and gown off of me and put it on Valeria to take pictures of her. They were scrolling through the photos I had taken when Valeria stopped and squinted. Your finger is covering the lens, she said flatly. You always sabotage my success. Something in me finally snapped. Oh, sort of like when you got rejected from your dream college and let me take the fall. The words hung there, sharp and still. My parents froze. Valeria went pale. What are you talking about? She laughed, but it was thin, cracked glass. I stared directly at her. Remember senior year? You asked me to pretend I deleted your acceptance email because you didn't want Mom and Dad to know you got rejected. Mom's eyes darted between us. Is this true? She asked, voice shaking. Valeria stammered. Well, not really. But kind of, I guess you could say. She didn't finish. Dad crossed the space between us and gave me a hug. I'm sorry, he whispered. I gently pushed him off, grabbed my gown from Valeria, and walked out. I didn't look back. I just drove straight to my dorm. Good riddance. The next day, I logged into my bank account to see if I had enough left to get my graduation gown ironed. That's when I saw it. Drained. My account was drained. $213 at the Container Store. $370 at Chuck E. Cheese. My blood turned to fire. I didn't even need to guess. Valeria was behind it. I scrolled through the transactions, each one making my stomach drop further than the last. Makeup stores, food deliveries, a designer hoodie. The dates went back 3 months. 3 whole months of her bleeding me dry while I was drowning in finals, too exhausted to notice. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone and called the bank. A robotic voice welcomed me, then routed me to a representative. I explained everything in a rush, trying to keep my voice steady. She listened, quiet and professional, then said, I'm going to place you on a brief hold while I look into this. I spent what felt like hours pacing my tiny dorm room, stepping over deflated balloons and unopened graduation cards. All the decorations I never got to use. Finally, she came back. I'm really sorry, but unless you can provide concrete proof that these charges weren't authorized by you, we can't reverse them. What kind of proof? I asked, even though I already knew. Documentation. Screenshots. A police report, if possible. I hung up, jaw clenched. I immediately started changing every single password. I had Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, everything. That's when it hit me. Amazon. We'd shared an Amazon Prime account back in high school. I let her order a book once, years ago. She must have saved my card info back then and never deleted it. My phone buzzed. Valeria, you embarrassed me at your graduation. Consider this payment for emotional damages. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Then I took a screenshot. Another text followed right after. Valeria, Mom and Dad agree you owe me. My heart pounded as my fingers flew across the keyboard. I logged into my bank app and froze every card I had. The damage was already done, but she wasn't getting another cent from me. Then I started a fraud report online, uploading the screenshot of her text as evidence. One transaction stood out like a neon sign. Chuck E. Cheese, $370. Valeria didn't have kids. Neither did I. Neither did any of our cousins. Who the hell spends $370 at Chuck E. Cheese? I picked up the phone and called the location, faking a cheerful tone. Hi, I'm checking on a birthday party reservation from last weekend. Do you happen to have footage from that day? It would help us settle a mix-up. The manager, a tired-sounding woman named Vicky, was surprisingly helpful. Yeah, we keep footage for a few weeks. What day are you looking for? I gave her the date on the transaction. A half hour later, I was parked outside the location. Inside, Vicky pulled up the grainy footage on an ancient monitor. I leaned in. There she was. Valeria, clear as day at the register, swiping my card. Laughing. Surrounded by a few women I didn't recognize. They were buying pizza, drinks, tokens like they were at some Vegas show for toddlers. Vicky glanced over at me. That her? I nodded. Can I record this? It's for a fraud report. Go ahead, she said with a sigh, turning the monitor toward me. Good luck. Back in my car, I checked my email. 3 new messages from my parents. I didn't open them. I already knew what they'd say. Valeria was the victim. I was the villain. Same old script. My phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to the message. Delilah, you need to apologize to your sister. She's been crying all day. You've ruined her mental health with your lies. Call us back immediately. I deleted it without hesitation. Another call came through. Dad. I declined and blocked both their numbers temporarily. I needed space. Just space to think. The next morning, pounding at my door woke me up. My roommate had already left for summer break, so I was alone. I dragged myself out of bed and checked the peephole. No one. When I opened the door, a pile of mail had been shoved underneath. I crouched down and picked it up. Credit card rejection letters. At least a dozen. All addressed to me. My heart dropped. I ripped them open one by one. 5 different companies. All applications submitted in the last week. All using my social security number. I called each credit card company one by one, my voice shaking harder with every call. The reps were polite, but I could hear the same hesitation in all of them. 2 of the cards had actually been approved before the others caught on. Both were already maxed out designer handbags, shoes, jewelry. Thousands of dollars. Thousands of my dollars. By the time I hung up the last call, I was sweating. I set up fraud alerts with all 3 major credit bureaus. TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. While I was on hold with Experian, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. That's when my stomach completely bottomed out. Valeria's Closet. A brand new account. Authentic designer goods. DM to purchase. All items brand new. I clicked through the photos. There they were, my stolen handbags. My stolen jewelry. She was selling everything she bought using my identity like it was her own little boutique. My hands were ice cold as I made a fake account some throwaway name, just enough to seem like a regular buyer, and messaged her. Hey, super interested in the Louis Vuitton bag still available? She replied within minutes. Totally, $1,200. Venmo preferred. You can pick up at my place, just LMK time. Then she sent her apartment address. I took screenshots of everything. Payment request. Address. The photo of the bag. I added them to my evidence folder. That afternoon, I was pacing my dorm when I heard voices echoing down the hallway, familiar voices. My blood went cold. I peered through the peephole and nearly choked. Valeria. My parents. All walking toward my door. How the hell did they get into the building? The knock came loud and hard. I didn't move. We know you're in there. Mom's voice. Sweet and sharp like a poison apple. The RA let us in. I hit record on my phone and held it through the crack in the door, keeping the chain on. My heart hammered in my chest. What do you want? I asked. Dad stepped forward, holding a folder. Valeria's lawyer drew up some papers. You just need to sign saying you authorized all the purchases. It'll clean everything up. I stared at him like he'd grown 2 heads. Are you insane? I laughed. You want me to sign that I let her steal from me? Valeria shoved forward, eyes wild. Just sign the papers, Delilah. This is getting ridiculous. You stole my identity. I snapped. I didn't steal anything, she screamed. You owe me. You've always had everything handed to you. Handed to me? I blinked. I worked my ass off. While I what? She snapped. While I got rejected from college. While you rubbed your success in my face every chance you got. I deserve compensation. You deserve nothing, I hissed. I took what was mine. Behind the door, I kept the camera steady, recording everything, my phone resting in the crook of my arm, out of view. Valeria, Mom whispered, trying to calm her, but she wasn't done. For years you were gone, living your perfect little college life, while I was stuck here. So yeah, I used your stupid card. You can afford it with your fancy degree. Valeria, enough, Dad said, trying to pull her back. But she kept going. What's a few thousand to Miss Perfect? You probably didn't even notice until now. I didn't say another word. I just shut the door. Slowly. Silently. I could still hear them outside as I saved the audio and video to 3 different cloud accounts. They pounded on the door for 10 more minutes until the building's security showed up and escorted them out. That evening, I met up with Nolan, my friend from law school, at a little coffee shop downtown. He'd graduated the year before and was working at a small firm. When I showed him everything, the screenshots, the footage, the texts, his expression turned dark. This is serious identity theft, he said, already typing on his laptop. We're drafting cease and desist letters now, and you need to file police reports ASAP. We spent the next 2 hours building the case. Nolan offered to represent me pro bono, refusing to let me say no. No way in hell I'm letting someone do this to a friend, he said. By the end of the night, I had a thick stack of letters and documentation, ready to be mailed out the next morning. When I woke up, my phone was practically shaking from notifications. 17 missed calls from my boss. My stomach twisted into knots as I hit redial. He answered on the first ring. Delilah, thank God. We got a call yesterday saying you were quitting, effective immediately. I figured something was off since you just graduated, my boss said over the phone, but HR was ready to process it. My hands trembled. I never called. I'm not quitting. I figured as much, he replied. The person calling didn't sound professional at all, kept ranting about how you didn't deserve the job. Can you come in today to sort this out with HR? I didn't even change out of my pajamas. I grabbed my keys and drove to the office in slippers and a hoodie. When I got there, the HR manager, Klaus, greeted me with a tense smile and a printout in hand. We pulled the phone records, he said, walking me into the conference room. The call came from this number. He pointed. Valeria's cell number. She hadn't even tried to hide it. We'll need you to file a formal complaint, Klaus added, his voice tight. This is serious. Someone impersonated an employee to sabotage their career. We've never seen anything like this before. I nodded numbly, then spent the next 3 hours filling out statements, signing documents, reviewing policies, and trying not to cry. Everyone assured me my job was safe, but I could feel the shift in the room, their concern. The way they now looked at me like I was carrying a time bomb of family drama they hadn't signed up for. On the drive home, I was too drained to even play music. That's when my phone buzzed. Facebook notification. Carter had messaged me. Carter, my ex from sophomore year. We hadn't spoken in ages. Hey, this is weird, but I think someone's pretending to be you on a dating app. They're asking really strange questions about your personal life. Thought you should know. My heart sank. I pulled over and called him immediately. Carter, what kind of questions? Like, really specific stuff, he said. Where you keep important documents, your routines, if you have any compromising photos from college or whatever. Jesus, I whispered. I knew it wasn't you, he said. The grammar was all off. You always use punctuation. This person writes like, Valeria. Of course. I quickly explained everything, from the stolen credit cards to the Chuck E. Cheese footage to her showing up at my door with legal threats. Carter didn't hesitate. I'll keep talking to her. Pretend I'm into it. We can get her to incriminate herself. Within the hour, fake Delilah had sent him dozens of messages, digging for dirt, trying to blackmail me, asking questions like, wouldn't it be crazy if someone leaked Delilah's student loans info? Ever see her drunk back in college? Where'd she keep her backup drive again? That night, I changed my locks. Again, installed a security camera in my dorm. The building manager wasn't thrilled, but after I explained the situation, he made an exception. I also ordered a small fireproof safe for my important documents. 2 days later, I came back from grocery shopping and froze in the hallway. My door was open. Not wide, just barely cracked. But enough. My heart slammed into my ribs. I edged forward slowly, one hand gripping my phone. The new lock had been picked. I stepped inside and gasped. Everything was ripped apart, drawers yanked out, my bed flipped, papers scattered everywhere. I rushed to my desk. Gone. My passport. My birth certificate. But the camera, she hadn't seen the camera. Hands shaking, I opened the app and scrubbed through the last few hours. There she was. Valeria. Clear as day. Using a key. A key only my parents had. She walked in like she owned the place, spent 20 full minutes going through everything. Taking photos of my bank statements, stealing documents, even leaving notes. You can't hide from family. Written in lipstick on my mirror. Give up. Taped to my laptop screen. I called the police. Officer O. Victoria and her partner arrived within 20 minutes. While her partner dusted for fingerprints, she sat across from me at my kitchen table, watching the footage. This is breaking and entering, theft, and identity fraud, she said, brows furrowed. With all this evidence, we can definitely move forward with charges. I nodded slowly, finally letting myself breathe. While waiting for the official report, I opened Facebook and searched for someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Veronica. Valeria's best friend in high school. We'd been friendly back then. Not close, but cordial. And I remembered how, even when everyone else fawned over Valeria, Veronica always seemed skeptical. I messaged her, explaining what happened. Within minutes, my phone rang. Oh my God, Delilah. Her voice was breathless. I've been waiting for someone to finally stand up to her. She did this to her college roommate too, Veronica said, her voice hard with disgust. Stole her credit card and ran up charges. Then convinced everyone the roommate was lying. I sat frozen. Would you be willing to make a statement? Absolutely. I have text messages where she bragged about it. She thought it was hilarious. Over the next week, I worked like a machine. Every free hour went into building my case. I gathered my bank records, the Chuck E. Cheese security footage, Veronica's messages, the call logs from my office, the footage of Valeria breaking into my dorm, the credit card applications, all of it. Witness statements, screenshots, the video of her screaming at my door. My friend Nolan helped me organize everything into a polished, professional file. Neatly labeled, cross-referenced. Ironclad. Then Valeria slipped. She panicked. She called me from an unknown number. I didn't say a word at first, just hit record and let the app run. Delilah, let's work this out, she said, voice tight with false calm. I'll return your documents and pay back some of the money if you drop everything. Some. I repeated, my voice cold. I mean, I can't return the stuff I already sold. But I'll give you like half. That's fair, right? Fair. I said, trying not to scream. You stole my identity, Valeria. You stole my life. She exploded. You got to go to college. Get a degree, move away. I was stuck here, being compared to you every single day. That's not my fault. Yes, it is, she shrieked. Everything is your fault. Mom and Dad only cared about your achievements. Delilah's doing so well in school. Delilah got another internship. What about me? You could have gone to community college, I said. Gotten a job. Done something with your life instead of stealing mine. She hung up. The next day, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Notifications flooded in Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn. Valeria had gone nuclear. She posted on every platform, tagging mutual friends, old neighbors, relatives we hadn't spoken to in years. In her version of events, I was mentally unstable. I'd attacked her at graduation. I'd fabricated the entire identity theft out of jealousy. She painted herself as the victim, and some people believed her. I started getting messages. Are you okay? Have you thought about therapy? Why would you make up something like this about your own sister? So I posted my own response. No anger, no commentary, just the facts. The video footage of her at Chuck E. Cheese. Screenshots of her messages to Carter. The Amazon receipts. The call logs from HR. The security footage of her breaking into my dorm. My frozen credit report. Everything. It was undeniable. The tide shifted almost instantly. Comments poured in, full of disbelief, anger, support. People were furious on my behalf. Dozens messaged me privately with stories Valeria had borrowed money and never paid it back. She'd stolen from group projects, manipulated friends, lied. So many patterns I hadn't seen until now. Then my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the decline button. But something made me answer. Delilah, she said. Her voice was small, broken. We saw everything. The footage. The evidence. You didn't know, I said flatly. We didn't want to know, she whispered. Can you come over, please? Your father and we need to talk to you. To apologize. To make this right. I drove back to my childhood home for the first time in years. It looked the same, but smaller, quieter, like all the air had been sucked out of it. Mom opened the door. Her eyes were red, rimmed with tears. Dad sat at the kitchen table, hunched over, older than I remembered. On his laptop, the footage of Valeria in my dorm room played on loop. They'd watched it again and again. I failed you, Dad said. His voice was rough. We failed both of you, but especially you. And then I saw her. Valeria, sitting in the corner like a scolded child. Her hair unkempt, her eyes rimmed in smeared makeup. She wouldn't even look at me. Tell her, Mom said. Tell her everything. Valeria looked up slowly. She started talking. She told me how the resentment had built over the years, how every achievement of mine felt like a personal attack. How she'd convinced herself she deserved compensation for the pain. How it started small. Just a few Amazon purchases. Nothing serious. And then it spiraled. Fast. I was so angry, she whispered. You got to leave. You got to become someone new. I was stuck here, being the failure twin. I took a deep breath and looked her straight in the eyes. You were never a failure, I said. You chose to be. Every time you had an opportunity, you chose the easy way out. And when that didn't work, I shook my head. You chose to steal from me. The police reports were filed, one after another. I'd never set foot in a police station before this, and now I practically lived there. The officers knew my name. They didn't smile anymore when they saw me, but they nodded like I belonged. The credit card companies began their investigations. They'd seemed skeptical at first, just another case in their endless queue, but once I handed over the footage, the screenshots, the recordings, the paper trail, their tone changed. My fraud claims were approved, one by one. Each time a reversal showed up in my account, I felt something loosen in my chest, like I was finally exhaling after weeks of holding my breath. The money started trickling back. Not just digits on a screen, this was my name, my identity, being restored piece by piece. Valeria was charged with identity theft, breaking and entering, and fraud. I didn't smile when I heard the words. I didn't cry. I just nodded. My lawyer Nolan kept me updated through every step. Her lawyer pushed hard for a deal, and she got one community service, probation, and mandatory therapy. She had to pay restitution for everything she stole. And even more than that, the truth was finally, publicly out. No more lies. No more pretending. 3 weeks later, we started family therapy. That first session, I thought I might walk out within minutes. We sat in a circle in a beige room that smelled like hand sanitizer and stale coffee. The therapist's voice was soft, but unyielding. She didn't let anyone off the hook. It was awkward. Painful. There were tears, accusations, years of buried resentment, and silent blame being dragged into the light. I hated it, and I needed it. I always thought I was helping, Mom admitted during one of the early sessions, her voice shaking. I thought if I praised Valeria more, she'd gain confidence. I didn't realize I was creating a monster, and destroying another daughter in the process. The therapist nodded, her gaze level. Intent doesn't erase impact. Valeria's individual therapy uncovered more anxiety, depression, and a diagnosed personality disorder that explained some of her twisted logic. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it explained the way her mind had spiraled. why she felt entitled to my life, my achievements, my identity. We started rebuilding. Not the family we had been, I didn't want that back, but something new. Something with boundaries, honesty, accountability. It was like learning to breathe again. Valeria got a job, started community college. Bit by bit, she began building her own life instead of trying to live mine. I kept my distance. I showed up for therapy and little else. Trust didn't come back overnight, but I saw change. Real change. Valeria apologized without expectation. My parents called to ask about my life without immediately pivoting to hers. At dinners, my wins weren't dismissed or diminished. They were celebrated. It wasn't perfect. Some days it felt forced. Some relatives still believed her version of the story. Some friends ghosted or took sides. But I was finally free. Free from the toxic dynamic that had choked my childhood. Free from the comparisons, the whispered criticisms, the constant guilt. For the first time, I could just be myself, without explanation or apology. The girl who'd been told she was too much, too ambitious, too cold. The one blamed for her sister's shortcomings, whose victories were twisted into selfishness. I was finally standing in my own truth. And that truth had set us all free. The bank representative's voice crackled through the speaker on my phone as I sat cross-legged on the floor of my dorm room, surrounded by printed statements and highlighted transactions. So, just to confirm, she said, you didn't authorize any of these purchases? No, I said firmly, circling another charge on the printout in front of me. None of them. She explained the fraud investigation process, speaking slowly so I could keep up. I scribbled furiously in the margins of a legal pad, trying to track it all: reference numbers, claim IDs, the next steps. The screenshot of the confession text is helpful, she said, but we'll need more concrete evidence directly linking her to the purchases. I'm working on it, I muttered, almost to myself. After we hung up, I started combing through the charges one by one. The Container Store receipt? That was during my organic chemistry final. Chuck E. Cheese? That happened the day after my thesis presentation. Every single transaction lined up perfectly with moments when I'd been too busy, too overwhelmed, too distracted to notice. My laptop pinged new email. Another credit card rejection. This one had been submitted yesterday. My hands were shaking before I even clicked it open. Capital One. Same social. Different address. Valeria's apartment. I grabbed my phone and called Capital One's fraud department. The rep confirmed it. 5 more credit card applications over the past week. Some were flagged, but 2 had already been approved. Cards expedited to her address. My stomach twisted. Still on the phone, I logged into Credit Karma. My credit score had dropped 150 points. Years of careful budgeting, responsible spending, on-time payments obliterated in a week. I listened as the representative guided me through placing fraud alerts, freezing accounts, flagging applications. She kept her voice steady, but I could hear the sympathy under it. The damage already done will take time to repair, she said gently. I thanked her, hung up, and looked around. My dorm room, the same one where I'd studied, cried, dreamed, felt like it was closing in on me. The air was stale. The walls were too close. My lungs couldn't expand. I needed air. I needed to think. Grabbing my evidence folder, I headed to the campus library. My heart still thudded with fury and disbelief, but the walk helped clear my head just enough to come up with a plan. I needed 3 things: document everything meticulously, prevent further damage, and gather enough irrefutable proof to stop Valeria permanently. The library was nearly deserted. Summer session meant fewer students, fewer distractions. I claimed a study room at the back, locked the door, and spread everything out across the long table. Bank statements, screenshots, rejection letters, every piece of my life that Valeria had touched with her lies. As I arranged the pages chronologically, a pattern started to emerge. She'd started small: $30 here, $50 there, testing the waters with random Amazon orders. And when nothing happened, she escalated. Credit cards, identity theft, resale scams. The scope of it made my stomach turn. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another collection agency or fraud alert. But something made me check. Voicemail, one new message. I pressed play. My mom's voice filled my ear, tight and sharp like she'd been crying or yelling. Delilah, this is ridiculous. Your sister is distraught. She says you're making things up because you're jealous of her new business venture. I stared at the phone. New business venture? A bitter laugh escaped me. She started selling designer goods online. Mom continued, completely missing the irony. Very entrepreneurial. Unlike someone who just throws accusations around. I ended the call before she could say another word. My throat burned. How could she still not see it? I opened Instagram and searched for @Valeria's Closet. Sure enough, there it was. Her latest post, uploaded just hours ago, displayed a carefully arranged spread of designer handbags, shoes, and jewelry, all of which had been purchased with my stolen identity. The caption read, "Fresh drops. Limited pieces available. DM to reserve. Hashtag luxury resale. Hashtag Valeria's closet." I stared at it, seething. The prices were way above retail, double, even triple. She was running a full-on scam with my name, my money. It took me less than 5 minutes to set up a fake Instagram account. At Chic Buyer 22, I messaged about a Gucci bag, keeping my tone bubbly and casual, like an excited buyer. Valeria responded almost immediately. "Hi babe. It's cash only. Pick up at my apartment tomorrow at 2 p.m. First come, first serve." I screenshotted everything, her replies, the price, the address, the timing. The next morning was chaos. My email inbox pinged nonstop, 3 more rejection notices from banks. And 1 approval. Discover card. $5,000 limit. Approved despite the fraud alerts I placed. My stomach dropped. I immediately called their fraud department. "The account has already been closed," the representative told me. "But it was maxed out within hours." She read off the transactions. Electronics. Jewelry. A hotel stay. It felt like someone was draining the lifeblood from my very identity. Desperate for more evidence, I drove to Chuck E. Cheese, hoping to catch Vicky, the manager, during a lull. The place smelled like grease and floor cleaner, just like before. Vicky remembered me. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Back again. I know this is asking a lot," I said, gripping the counter, "but I need that footage. The day my card was used." She hesitated, glancing toward the security monitors. "We're not supposed to give that out. Please, just let me record the screen. I'll blur anything I need to." She sighed. "Fine. I'll pull it up. I didn't see anything though, okay?" "Okay. Thank you." She loaded the file on the computer. There was Valeria laughing, carefree, surrounded by friends as she handed over my debit card at the counter. The timestamp matched perfectly with my bank statement. I pulled out my phone and filmed the whole thing, making sure Valeria's face was clear. She looked proud of herself, like she'd gotten away with something. Back in my car, I finally let myself breathe, only to see I'd missed several calls. Unknown number. I played the voicemail. It was my boss. "Delilah, we received a concerning call about you today. Please contact HR immediately." My vision blurred as I fumbled to dial HR. Klaus answered on the second ring. "This is Klaus speaking." "It's Delilah," I said, my voice tight. "I got a message to call." "Yes, thank you for calling back," he said. "We received a call earlier today from someone claiming to be you. They said you were resigning immediately due to mental health concerns." The caller was quite graphic. "They claimed you had a breakdown." "That wasn't me," I said through gritted teeth. "I would never." "We figured as much." The caller didn't sound professional. "In fact, they kept ranting that you didn't deserve your position here." He paused. "Can you come in to file a report?" I drove straight to the office, not caring that I was still wearing yesterday's clothes, my shirt wrinkled and hair pulled into a limp ponytail. The front desk waved me in without question. Word must have already spread. Klaus was waiting, fingers flying across his keyboard as he pulled up the call logs. "The number that contacted HR," he said without looking up, "belongs to Valeria's cell. She didn't even try to hide it." I stared at the screen, rage and disbelief warring in my chest. "This is serious harassment," Klaus continued, printing a fresh stack of documents. "We're drafting the incident report now, and we'll need any supporting documentation for our legal department. Messages, call logs, emails, whatever you have." I nodded numbly. "I have a lot." 3 exhausting hours later, I left the office with assurances that my job was secure, at least for now. But I couldn't stop thinking about the bigger picture. What if Valeria had contacted other potential employers? What if she was destroying my name beyond what I could track? As if summoned by the thought, my phone buzzed. Facebook message, Carter Thompson. I froze. Carter, my ex from sophomore year. We hadn't spoken in over a year, not since we drifted apart post-breakup. The message was short. "Hey, I think someone's using your photos. Match with me on some dating app, and things got weird fast. Thought you should know." Attached was a screenshot of my face. My name, slightly altered, and a disturbing chat log where I was asking invasive questions about Carter's college years. I called him immediately. "Carter? It's Delilah." "Hey," he answered quickly. "Glad you called. I knew it wasn't you. They kept calling me Danielle or something. I just thought it was creepy at first, then realized it might be serious." "What were they asking?" "Where you lived during college. Who your roommates were. If I had any embarrassing pictures or stories. Weird stuff. Like they were digging." My chest tightened. "That's Valeria." "Thought it might be," he muttered. "The phrasing, the typos, it didn't sound like you." We hatched a plan right then. He'd keep the conversation going, play along like he believed the imposter. I'd document everything. Within hours, the fake account had sent dozens of increasingly desperate messages asking for private photos, old screenshots, anything that could be used against me. The grammar was sloppy, emotional, so clearly Valeria's voice behind it. That evening, I took no more chances. I bought a security camera for my dorm room, changed every password with a secure password manager, installed new locks when the building manager balked. I showed him screenshots and police reports. He backed down. I also purchased a small safe, tucked it beneath my bed for my most important documents. Birth certificate, passport, banking info, all secured. It was quiet for 2 days. I used that time to organize everything I had: evidence, police reports, witness names. Nolan, my lawyer friend, helped me draw up cease and desist letters. He walked me through the process of pressing charges. We even outlined a restraining order if needed. But when I came home late on the 3rd day, my heart sank. My dorm room door was ajar. My new lock picked. Scratches along the doorframe, still fresh. I shoved it open and stepped inside to chaos. Drawers pulled out. Papers scattered across the floor. My documents tossed carelessly. I bolted to my desk, yanked it open. Gone. My passport. My birth certificate. Missing. I yanked out my phone and pulled up the camera app. My hands shook as the footage loaded. There she was. Valeria. Entering with a key, one of only 2 copies. The other was with my parents. She spent 20 minutes in my room, calmly rifling through drawers, snapping pictures of my financial documents, stealing what she wanted. Before leaving, she walked to my mirror, pressed a note onto it. You can't escape family. On my laptop, another. Give up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just grabbed my phone and dialed. 911. What's your emergency? I need to report a break-in. I have video proof. And I know who did it. Officer O. Victoria arrived within 30 minutes. Her partner began dusting for fingerprints while she watched the footage I'd queued up on my phone. This is breaking and entering, theft, identity fraud, she said calmly, jotting notes. With evidence this clear, we can definitely press charges. We'll include this in the official report. While I waited for the paperwork, a name popped into my mind: Veronica. Valeria's high school best friend. We'd been cordial, even friendly once. She'd always seemed to sense something was off. I found her on Facebook. Typed out a cautious message, hitting send before I could second guess. The reply came fast. OMG Delilah, I've been waiting for someone to finally call her out. Can I call you? Seconds later, my phone rang. Veronica's voice was electric with vindication. She did the same thing to her freshman roommate, Veronica said. Stole her credit card, maxed it out, then lied and manipulated everyone into thinking the roommate was crazy. I have screenshots of her bragging about it. Would you be willing to make an official statement? Absolutely, she said. I'm tired of watching her hurt people. Over the next several days, I worked with a focus that bordered on obsession. I gathered bank records showing transactions I never made, security footage from Chuck E. Cheese, my dorm room, and even Valeria's apartment. Witness statements from Veronica, from Carter, even from the dorm manager. I transcribed the recording of Valeria's bitter confession through my door. Nolan, ever the professional, helped me turn it into something airtight. A comprehensive legal file. My phone rang constantly, unknown numbers, one after another. I assumed they were my parents. I let them all go to voicemail. I didn't have the energy, not when there was still so much damage to control. Each credit bureau had now been updated with extensive fraud alerts. My bank reissued cards with enhanced security features. My employer had thoroughly documented Valeria's harassment in case it came to legal action. I was starting to breathe again. Then Valeria panicked. The call came from another unknown number, late one evening. I almost let it ring out, like all the others, but something in me hesitated. I hit record before I answered. Delilah, we need to talk, Valeria said. Her voice was strained, unsteady. This has gone too far. I didn't respond. You broke into my room. I barked a humorless laugh. Valeria, I was looking for something that belonged to me. What could possibly belong to you in my dorm room? I asked, voice icy. She paused. I could picture her blinking, scrambling, clearly not expecting me to challenge her so directly. Look, she said finally, let's make a deal. I'll return your documents and pay back some of the money if you drop all this. Some of the money? I repeated, incredulous. I can't return what I already sold, she said, voice defensive now. But I'll give you half of what I made. That's fair. Fair. My voice cracked from the sheer absurdity. You stole my identity. You tried to get me fired. You're destroying my credit. You destroyed my life. That broke something in her. The carefully rehearsed calm vanished. You got everything, she snapped. College. Freedom. A future. I was stuck here being reminded every day that I wasn't you. So you decided to steal my life instead of building your own? I said, my voice hardening. I deserve compensation, she shouted. 4 years of being compared to perfect Delilah. For years of, why can't you be more like your sister? You owe me. I owe you nothing, I said, low and firm. You made your choices. My choices. Her voice wavered. I didn't choose to be rejected from college. I didn't choose to be the failure twin. No, I said. But you chose to lie about it. You chose to blame me. You chose to steal from me instead of taking responsibility. There was silence on the other end. Then a click. She hung up. But I had everything recorded. The next morning, my social media exploded. Valeria had gone nuclear. She posted across every platform, tagging mutual friends, distant relatives, people we hadn't spoken to in years. Her story was clear. I was mentally unstable. I was jealous of her success. I was making up elaborate lies because I couldn't handle how far she'd come in life. Some people believed her. Messages poured in, some asking if I was okay, some gently suggesting therapy, others wondering why I'd fabricate such serious accusations. But others, people who really knew us, weren't so quick to judge. Valeria had always been good at twisting the narrative, but this time I was ready. I fought back with the truth. I crafted a post and shared everything. The security footage of her breaking into my room. Bank statements showing unauthorized charges. Screenshots of her online business selling stolen goods. Credit reports full of fraudulent applications. All of it, laid out chronologically and clearly, like a case file. The response was immediate. Comments flooded in shock, anger, disbelief. More than that, my inbox filled with messages. Former classmates, coworkers, even distant cousins. People shared their own stories, how Valeria had borrowed and never repaid money, used others' names, manipulated, lied, stolen. It was like a dam broke. Then, my phone rang again. Mom. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Finally, I answered. Delilah. Her voice was different. Small. Fragile. We saw your post. The video. Is all of this true? Every word, I said quietly. There was a pause, then, your father and I, we need to see you. Please. Why? I asked. So you can tell me again how I'm ruining Valeria's life? No, she said, voice cracking. So we can apologize. So we can try to understand how we failed you so badly. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. But the next morning, I got in my car and drove home. My childhood house looked exactly the same, but somehow smaller, dimmer. Mom opened the door, her eyes red and swollen. She looked like she hadn't slept. Dad sat at the kitchen table, laptop open to my post. They'd watched the footage dozens of times, they said, trying to comprehend, trying to process the truth. Their golden child Valeria breaking into my room, stealing from me, destroying my life out of spite. We gave her the key, Mom whispered, her voice barely audible. In case of emergencies. We never thought. She trailed off. She didn't have to finish. Valeria sat slouched in the corner of the living room, no longer the confident manipulator I had grown up with. She looked small, deflated, caught. Tell her, Dad said, voice hard. Tell her everything. Now. I crossed my arms, standing stiffly as I waited. I didn't know what would come, but for once she had nowhere to hide. And then, like a flood that had waited too long behind a dam, it spilled out. All of it, she started quietly. The resentment, it's been there for years. Every time someone praised you, it felt like an attack on me. Every time you succeeded, I felt like I disappeared a little more. I convinced myself I deserved something. Something back. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. I didn't give her comfort. I just listened. It started with one Amazon order, she said, eyes darting everywhere, but at me. I told myself I'd pay it back. Then it was another, and then your credit card. Her voice cracked. I hated you, she finally admitted. You got to leave. You got to become someone. I was stuck here, being nothing. You weren't nothing, I said sharply. You chose to do nothing. There's a difference. Easy for you to say, she spat. You had grades, acceptance letters, a future. Because I worked for them, I snapped. While you were partying, I was studying. While you made excuses, I made plans. You could have done the same. With everyone comparing me to you, she said bitterly. Always, why can't you be more like Delilah? Delilah would never do that. Look how well Delilah's doing. I couldn't escape you. So you tried to become me instead. The room fell into a vacuum of silence. No one moved. No one dared breathe. Mom reached for my hand across the couch cushion, but I pulled away. Her touch burned. One confession didn't wipe out a childhood of favoritism and silence. The next few weeks blurred into one long stretch of phone calls, meetings, signatures. Police reports were filed. Credit card companies launched investigations. Slowly, methodically, fraudulent charges were reversed. Stolen funds were trickling back into my accounts. But the damage to my credit? That would take months to untangle. Valeria was formally charged, identity theft, breaking and entering, fraud. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal. Community service, probation, mandated therapy, full restitution. No jail time. Barely. Family therapy began 3 weeks later. Dr. Martinez was calm, measured, soft-spoken in a way that made her presence feel safe. In that room, all the fractures in our family were peeled back and examined like broken bones that had healed wrong. The favoritism I'd felt since childhood? Validated. The excuses for Valeria's behavior? Exposed. The enabling? Named. I thought I was helping. Mom cried during one session. Valeria seemed so fragile compared to Delilah. I thought if I praised her more, she'd feel stronger. Instead, Dr. Martinez said gently, "You created entitlement," and made Delilah feel unseen. Valeria's individual therapy uncovered things we hadn't known: anxiety, depression, signs of a personality disorder. It didn't excuse what she did, but it helped explain why she had spent so many years weaving a victim narrative just to avoid responsibility. And slowly, painfully, we started to rebuild. Not the family we'd once been. That was gone. Forever. But something new. With boundaries. With truth. With accountability. Valeria got a job at a local retail store. Enrolled in community college. She started making her own life, instead of stealing mine. I kept my distance. I showed up to therapy, but beyond that I set limits. Trust isn't immediate. It takes time. And she hadn't earned it yet. But I noticed the changes. Real ones. Apologies that didn't come with demands for forgiveness. Phone calls from my parents that didn't include comparisons. Dinners where my work was celebrated, not resented. Some people still didn't believe me. Some friends chose sides. That hurt. But the truth was louder. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from the toxic roles that had defined us. Free to be myself, without apology or explanation. The girl who had been told she was too much. Too ambitious. Too successful. Too lucky. The girl who'd been blamed for her sister's failures. The girl who'd had her identity stolen literally and twisted into something grotesque. That girl was standing in her truth. And that truth had set all of us free. Now, the courthouse steps stretched before me like a mountain I had to climb. I clutched my evidence binder tightly to my chest, every page proof of survival. Valeria and her lawyer stood near the entrance, huddled close together. Mom and Dad stood awkwardly between us, their faces drawn, pale from the exhaustion of weeks spent shuttling between depositions and hearings. None of this felt like a victory. It just felt hollow. Inside the courtroom, the prosecutor laid out the case with precision, piece by piece, like stacking bricks around the truth until it became undeniable. The screen lit up with security footage: Valeria entering my dorm, the frantic ransacking of my drawers, her fingers thumbing through my passport and birth certificate. The judge's expression darkened, growing colder with each new revelation. Then came the bank records. Unauthorized transactions that stretched back months. Credit reports riddled with accounts I never opened. Screenshots of her selling items that had been mine: jewelry, textbooks, even old electronics on online marketplaces under fake names. Valeria's lawyer tried to paint a softer picture. A troubled young woman. Deep emotional wounds. Bad decisions made under pressure. But the prosecutor didn't let up. Veronica's testimony was damning: how Valeria had done this before. Carter's screenshots, the fake profiles, the invasive questions. Klaus from HR explaining how she impersonated me in a call meant to sabotage my job. Officer O, Victoria presenting the formal charges, walking through each one like crossing off a list. During recess, I went to the bathroom. My hands shook as I splashed cold water on my face, trying to breathe. The door creaked open behind me. I saw her in the mirror: Valeria. Same face. Same bone structure. Same eyes. But not the same life. Hers was desperate now, frayed at the edges. She opened her mouth. Delilah. But before she could say anything, her lawyer stepped in, her voice like a whip. No, absolutely not. You are not to speak to the victim. I stood frozen as they left. I dried my hands, deliberately slow, watching them vanish. Back in court, Valeria took the stand. Her voice trembled as she admitted everything. The stolen financial information. The fraud. Breaking into my room. Trying to get me fired. Catfishing my ex. The words came haltingly, her armor breaking with each sentence. The years of resentment spilled out like infected wounds. I just wanted to be seen, she said at one point, barely audible. But it wasn't about visibility. It was about choices. The judge didn't hesitate. Guilty. On all counts. Identity theft. Breaking and entering. Fraud. Harassment. Valeria's shoulders shook as the bailiff read the verdict. No one clapped. No one cried. Just silence. Outside the courthouse, the scene was chaos. Someone had tipped off the press. Cameras flashed. Reporters barked questions: is it true you're sisters? Did you really steal her identity? How long was this going on? Nolan put an arm around me and pushed us through the crowd. I kept my head down. Mom and Dad followed behind, shielding their faces. The next morning brought another storm. My phone exploded with notifications. The local news had run the story, Twin sister steals identity in elaborate fraud scheme. My college photo was plastered beside Valeria's mugshot, the headline cold and sensational. I turned off my phone, focused on what I could control. The credit bureaus needed updated documentation. My bank asked for notarized affidavits. Every credit card company involved wanted separate forms. I spent hours on hold, explaining the same situation again and again, my voice getting flatter each time. Nolan helped draft a formal statement for my employer. We wanted to be ahead of the narrative. Calvin from HR called me personally. "We know you're the victim here," he said. "You've got our support, Delilah." But there was hesitation in his voice. I could hear it. This kind of publicity wasn't good for anyone. 3 days later, Valeria's sentencing came down. 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, mandated therapy, full restitution, no jail time. Her lawyer had worked the system well. I sat in the gallery, arms crossed, watching as the judge read the terms. Valeria looked smaller somehow, like the weight of actual consequences had hollowed her out. She didn't glance at me, didn't try to speak. Afterward, in the parking lot, Mom approached me. "We've started family therapy again," she said, her hands wringing together. "Dr. Martinez thinks it's helping. I know we've failed in a lot of ways, Delilah, but we want to move forward. Heal, if you're ready." I looked at her, my car keys cold in my hand. "I'm not ready," I said honestly, and I left. The restitution checks started arriving within weeks. At first, they were small $50, $75, then larger sums followed as Valeria sold off her car and emptied what little she had in savings. Each envelope came with a note from her lawyer, dry and clinical. Enclosed, "Please find payment in the amount of." Cold, legal language. No apology, just math. I used the money to pay off every fraudulent charge. Covered legal fees. The rest went into savings. A buffer, in case the storm ever came back. My credit score slowly climbed, each small point of victory, each increase a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. And through it all, work became my refuge. I threw myself into projects, staying late most nights. It was easier than going home, easier than thinking about everything that had unraveled over the past few months. My coworkers sensed something had happened, but no one pried. Occasionally someone would mention seeing the story on the news, then quickly steer the conversation elsewhere when they caught the look on my face. One evening, a text lit up my phone. It was from Carter. "Carter, you're not going to believe this." She's at it again. Attached were screenshots Valeria, under new fake accounts, claiming she was a victim of the justice system. According to her, I had set her up and lied to destroy her life. The posts didn't get much attention. Most people recognized her face from the news, remembered the story for what it was. Still, I took no chances. I documented every screenshot, timestamped them, and sent them straight to Nolan. He didn't respond right away, but I trusted him. 2 days later, he called. "She got a warning," he said. "Probation office flagged the accounts. They're gone now. One more incident, and she could lose the deal. No jail time wasn't a gift, it's a leash." I thanked him and hung up. Mom started calling more often after that. I rarely answered, but her voicemails piled up. Each one sounded more frantic, her voice thinner than the last. She talked about Valeria's therapy, how progress was slow but real. About Dad's health, how the stress had triggered blood pressure spikes. Each time, guilt nipped at the edge of my resolve. And each time, I reminded myself I wasn't the one who broke everything. 6 weeks into Valeria's probation, a package arrived. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside, my passport and birth certificate. A yellow sticky note was attached. "I'm sorry." That was it. No name. No explanation. I stared at the note for a long time, then drove to the passport agency the next day. I wanted to believe they were real, but I wasn't taking chances, not anymore. The officer examined them carefully, eventually nodding. "They're legitimate," he said, glancing up at me. "Is there a reason for the concern?" I forced a smile. Long story. Another small humiliation in a series of many. 2 months later, my apartment lease ended. I found a new place across town. Valeria didn't know the address. I made sure of that. The moving company came early, boxing up the last traces of my old life. I left no forwarding address with the building. No trail. The first night in the new place, I sat on the floor, surrounded by towers of boxes and plastic bins. I ate takeout straight from the container, chopsticks clutched in my hand like a lifeline. My phone buzzed, 3 new messages from Mom. "Are you okay? Do you need help moving in? Please let me know. We miss you." I turned off the phone and kept unpacking. A week later, work offered me a promotion. More responsibility. Better pay. My boss pulled me aside after a team meeting. "We've all been impressed, Delilah. You've handled everything with a kind of quiet strength. That doesn't go unnoticed. It was corporate speak for you, survived public scandal and still delivered." I accepted the promotion on the spot. A few days later, I found out through court updates that Valeria's community service had started. She'd been placed at a local thrift store, sorting donations, folding clothes. The irony didn't escape me. The girl who'd once stolen and sold designer bags now organizing other people's cast-offs. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I drove past the store, barely slowing down. Through the wide front windows, I spotted her Valeria bent over a clothing rack, folding sweaters with careful precision. Her supervisor stood a few feet away, watching. She looked up as my car passed. For a brief second, our eyes met. I didn't stop, didn't wave. I just kept driving. Mom's calls became less frequent, but more emotional. The last voicemail was about a breakthrough in Valeria's therapy, how she'd finally admitted the pain she caused, how her therapist said healing could begin. I deleted the message before she finished. My credit monitoring alerts became a habit once a week, then every two. Each time, no new activity, no surprises. Eventually, I stopped checking altogether. Progress measured in small freedoms. Nolan invited me to his firm's holiday party. My first instinct was to say no, to find an excuse. But something in me said go. Maybe normal had to start somewhere. I wore a navy blue dress. Minimal makeup. Just enough to feel like I was trying. His colleagues were kind, if a little curious. I kept the conversation on work, gently steering away from anything personal. A few mentioned the story in passing, how they'd followed the case, how impressed they were with how I carried myself. I smiled politely, nodded, said thank you. On the drive home, we passed my childhood neighborhood. Christmas lights twinkled from the porches. Same decorations I remembered from growing up, the glowing snowman at the Bensons, the flickering icicles on the Harrisons' eaves. I wondered if Mom had decorated this year, if Dad had helped, despite his health, if Valeria was home, or somewhere finishing her community service hours. My new apartment was still undecorated. I'd bought a small artificial tree from a discount store, left it in the corner. I hadn't assembled it. Work consumed most of my days, leaving little room, let alone energy, for holiday spirit. I didn't bother with decorations, and when it came time to shop for gifts, I did it all online. For friends only. When I reached the part of the checkout cart labeled family, I froze, then closed the tab entirely. Valeria's restitution checks kept arriving, regular as clockwork. At first, I'd opened each one, stared at the lawyer's letterhead, the stiff legal phrasing. But eventually I set up automatic deposit. It was easier, cleaner. I didn't need to be reminded every month of what had been taken. The balance in the account grew slowly, replacing the stolen money. One afternoon, a message popped up on my phone. Veronica. Saw Valeria at the grocery store. We said hi. She looked different. Healthier maybe. Calmer. Left in a hurry. I stared at it for a second. Me. Thanks for the update. I changed the subject immediately. I didn't want to dwell. Didn't want to care. A few days later, my boss called me into his office. His expression was blank, but his tone was warm. We've got a new project, he said. It requires someone with strong attention to detail, sensitive information, high stakes. Frankly, your handling of your recent situation showed a level of resilience we admire. I nodded. I'd be honored. He smiled. I thought you might. The project swallowed my calendar whole. Long hours, meticulous documentation, confidentiality protocols. I found comfort in the structure, in the rules. It was the opposite of the chaos I'd been living through for so long. No lies, no emotional sabotage. Just clear objectives and quiet focus. Then, one evening, while organizing audit files well past sunset, my desk phone rang. It was security. There's a man in the lobby asking for you. My heart spiked. Did he give a name? He said he's your father. My voice steadied before I did. Please tell him I've already left for the day. A few minutes later, my cell phone buzzed. A call from the same number. I picked up. Delilah. His voice sounded thinner than I remembered. Smaller. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to see how you were doing. Talk. Apologize again. Your mom, her health hasn't been great. Mine either, honestly. The stress, it's been a lot. For both of us. I said nothing for a beat. I have to get back to work, I finally answered. Maybe we'll talk another time. Okay, he said quietly. Be safe. I ended the call and stood by the window, staring down at the lobby. He waited there for nearly an hour before leaving. Security sent me the footage the next morning. I watched him shuffle toward the exit, shoulders rounded in defeat. And I felt nothing. The rage had long burned out. All that remained was a blank kind of exhaustion. A few weeks later, I got an email from Valeria's probation officer requesting a victim impact statement for her file. I sat down that night, fingers hovering over the keyboard for what felt like hours. The financial damage was easy to lay out. Numbers, transactions, facts. The emotional toll harder. How did I quantify years of comparison, resentment, manipulation? How did I explain what it felt like to have my identity, not just my name, but my entire personhood used like a costume by someone who was supposed to love me. I wrote it all, then submitted it without reading it again. Spring arrived, all green shoots and false promises. I stayed busy. I worked. I rebuilt credit. I focused on distance between me and the past, between me and the people who had failed to protect me from it. The promotion brought new challenges, and with it, a strange sense of peace. Weekends became errands, not obligation. Grocery shopping, laundry, quiet dinners, none of it involved my family. I hadn't been to one of their dinners in over a year. Then, a wedding invitation arrived. A friend from college. +1, it said. I RSVP'd for one. No explanation necessary. The wedding was simple, lovely. When the parent dances began, I stepped outside. Cold air swept across my skin. A wave of something caught in my throat. Not grief for what I'd lost, grief for what never was. For what could have been. A family that celebrated my wins instead of resenting them. Parents who saw both daughters clearly. I re-entered just in time for cake. The bride's sister gave a toast, loving, funny, entirely free of bitterness. I watched them from my table and thought, I hope they know how lucky they are. Monday came like it always did, pulling me back into routine. Work, home, repeat, safe, predictable. My credit score ticked upward. The promotion brought stability. My apartment, still small, still spare, felt like mine. Valeria completed her community service early, according to the records I checked online. Her probation continued, but the hours were done. I wondered briefly what she'd do now, then pushed the thought away. Not my concern anymore. Then came the letter. Handwritten. Sent to my office because she didn't know my home address. It was from Mom. Page after page of careful cursive. Updates on therapy. Reflections on failure. Pleas for reconciliation. Words about Valeria's progress. How much they both missed me. I read it once. Folded it carefully. Filed it with my documentation. Unanswered. The 1-year anniversary of the courthouse verdict passed quietly. I worked late that night, ordered takeout, and let some mindless TV run in the background. No candlelit vigil. No anniversary toast. Just a moment, barely more than a breath, spent staring at the blank wall above my desk and acknowledging how much had changed. How far I'd come. How much I'd rebuilt. Nolan called around 9. Everything's on track, he said. Restitution payments are consistent. No violations on her probation. Good. I replied, clicking through spreadsheet tabs, the glow of numbers soothing in the dim room. He hesitated. She filed an inquiry about early termination of probation. Good behavior. Nothing unusual. It'll likely be denied, but I wanted you to hear it from me. Thanks, Nolan. If anything changes, I'll let you know. Appreciated. I ended the call and returned to my spreadsheets. My numbers made sense in ways family never had. No mixed messages or double meanings. Just clean, honest columns of data. Reliable. Predictable. Building towards something real. The vibration of my phone snapped me out of that rhythm. An unknown number. I opened it. A single image. Valeria's community college graduation announcement. 2 years late. I stared at the photo. Her smile. The cap. The gown. The neat font announcing the degree she'd somehow completed. Then I blocked the number. No reply. No curiosity. Some bridges were better left collapsed. No matter how many years passed. Summer crept in, hot and slow, and with it came the unexpected. A job offer from a competitor. Better salary. A new city. A fresh start. The money was tempting, but the distance? The anonymity? That was the real gift. A place where nobody knew about the twin sister who'd stolen my name, my future, my trust. I sat with the offer for weeks, weighed every variable. My current employer made a counteroffer impressive, flattering, but I'd already decided. It was time to go. My colleagues threw a small farewell party. Kind words. Cake. Carefully chosen silence around why the move might feel so necessary. Packing felt different this time. This wasn't fleeing the fallout. This was a choice. My choice. Every box I labeled felt like a quiet reclaiming. Bedroom. Books. Kitchen. Not chaos. Not trauma. Just items I'd earned. The movers were scheduled. Flights booked. Apartment lease signed. No phone calls home. No permission sought. My last week in town, I drove past the old neighborhood. The house looked tired. Mom's car sat crooked in the driveway. Dad's garden was wild with weeds. Valeria's old car, sold long ago for restitution, was gone. I didn't stop. Didn't feel the pull to. Just one last look in the rearview mirror of the place that raised me and wrecked me. The moving truck arrived right on time. The team worked efficiently, loading my life with no questions asked. I watched it all go: furniture, books, clothing, memories fitting neatly into the belly of a truck. Freedom measured in cubic feet. The sun was just setting as the plane lifted off. Through the window, the city I'd known too long became a sea of tiny lights, then nothing at all. Somewhere down there, therapy sessions were being held. Family dialogues attempted. Reconciliations drafted in the margins of other people's healing. Without me, the new city greeted me with gray skies and thick traffic. My new building was sleek, modern, anonymous. I liked it instantly. The movers followed my instructions. No questions. No commentary. No history. I unpacked the essentials and ordered dinner from a place that didn't know my name or my usual order. The unfamiliarity was a relief. Work began the following Monday. New faces. New software. New routines. HR handed me paperwork. No awkward glances. No whispers. No history to explain. Just clean forms, new logins, and a fresh badge. A clean slate. I dove into training, grateful to be buried in it. No headlines. No family drama lurking behind polite smiles. Weeks passed in quiet momentum. I learned the bus routes. Found a grocery store I liked. Picked a gym. Built routines that belonged only to me. The phone stayed silent. I'd changed my number. Only work contacts had the new one. One night, while unpacking the last few boxes, I found them family photos I'd forgotten I'd kept. Birthdays. Graduations. Before everything soured. I looked at them for a long time. Not angry. Not sad. Just aware. A different version of life. One that no longer fit. I tucked the photos into a storage bin and slid them into the closet. Maybe one day I'd want to look again. For now, they could stay archived. Proof of what I'd endured. What I'd survived. What I'd rebuilt. A new colleague invited me for drinks after work. Happy to have you join us, she said. You're adjusting well. I'm trying. I smiled, following her down the block to the corner bar. Inside, the group was already gathered. Laughter, music, the low hum of glasses being set on tables. We ordered drinks. Talked about the job and the city. When someone at work asked about family over post-shift drinks, I didn't flinch. Only child, I said simply, without hesitation. The lie slid off my tongue as if it had always been true. It created the distance I needed, and she didn't press further. Instead, she nodded and steered the conversation toward office politics and the city's best coffee spots. Safe territory. I appreciated that. Back at the apartment, I unpacked more of the life I was slowly creating. Furniture deliveries arrived on schedule. Art was hung exactly where I wanted it. And the kitchen finally held more than takeout containers and boxed pasta. Every decision, every single detail was mine alone. No compromises. No second-guessing if Valeria or Mom would have liked the color of the throw pillows. I painted the small wall behind the couch a deep, moody blue, just because I wanted to. That alone felt like freedom. Work took most of my energy, and I let it. But weekends became mine. I wandered through the city, exploring without agenda. Museums I'd always meant to visit. Parks I found by accident. Restaurants tried on a whim, choosing dishes I didn't have to share or justify. There was quiet in those moments. A kind of peace I'd never known growing up. 6 months into the new job, Nolan forwarded me a letter official notice that Valeria's probation had ended. All restitution paid. Every requirement met. The legal chapter, as he put it, was officially closed. I stared at the letter for a long time before feeding it into the shredder. No ceremony. No pause. Just a piece of paper gone. The seasons shifted again, brisk mornings and longer days. With them came new projects and new challenges. I dove in, and I thrived. My manager commended my leadership during a department rollout. Another colleague looped me in on a client presentation without hesitation. They saw me as I was. Competent, reliable, successful. No shadows of scandal trailing behind. No whispered comparisons to a sister they'd never heard of. 1 year after the move, I realized I'd stopped counting. The apartment had become home. I knew my way to the best bakery without needing directions. My favorite coffee shop barista recognized my order. Friends had become weekend constants. Brunch, museum exhibits, even game nights. A life full of gentle routines and spontaneous joy. And not once did I have to apologize for who I was. Late at night, sometimes, I still wondered. Did Mom's health improve? Did Dad still garden? Had Valeria truly changed or just gotten better at hiding who she really was? But the morning always brought me back. Back to reports and deadlines. Back to the goals I'd set for myself. Back to the life I was living. Freedom felt strange in its quietness. I no longer checked my credit obsessively. Unknown numbers no longer sent adrenaline through my veins. I slept without dread. I existed without flinching. I'd lost a family, but I had gained myself. And on most days, that trade felt worth it. Some bridges, I'd learned, weren't meant to be rebuilt. They served their purpose by burning. They lit the path I needed to walk alone, yes, but forward. My story hadn't ended in dramatic reunions or handwritten forgiveness. It had ended the moment I recognized I didn't need reconciliation to find peace. Sitting in my corner office, typing reports, sipping tea I actually enjoyed, I caught a glimpse of myself reflected in the dark screen of my laptop. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the girl who had once been blamed for everything. This wasn't some phoenix story with flames and flight. It was quieter than that. Softer, but no less powerful. I'd built everything they said I'd stolen from scratch. A stable life, a respected name, a peaceful existence. The irony, of course, wasn't lost on me. Valeria tried to steal my life. And instead, she gave me the push I never would have taken on my own. She'd freed me, and I had no regrets. No reconciliation needed. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.